there, I'm Mindy Jensen,
And I'm Carl Jensen.
and this is the Mindy
And Carl.
on Money podcast, where we talk about what happens after you reach financial independence.
Why do we call this show Mindy on Money?
Why not?
Why not? That's it. That's the best we can come up with.
Today it is.
Oof.
On this episode of the Mindy
And Carl.
on Money podcast, Carl and I talk about money conversations and how to have them with non-fi friends.
Ooh, this is going to be a scary one. No one likes to talk about money. It's the same as what? Sex and religion, right? Is that the things we're not supposed to talk about?
I talk about money all the time.
I know, we totally do. It probably makes people uncomfortable, but hopefully not our listeners. Thank you. If you're still here listening, it doesn't make you uncomfortable, which is great. No one should feel uncomfortable about talking about money. Anyway, before we get started, let's take a quick break. Today's episode is sponsored by one of our favorite events. This is the Economy Conference. Go to economyconference.com to buy tickets for this epic weekend in Cincinnati. Last time Mindy and I were there, we saw a billboard that said Cincinnati, the San Diego of the Midwest. I have no idea what they mean by that. They must have not paid a lot of money for their marketing people, or it's just a big joke. It should be the San Francisco of the Midwest because it's got rolling hills. It's really quite beautiful, I think. I like it a lot. And it also has, guess where I'm going to go? I never bring this up, Skyline Chili, which I love, and Mindy is not a fan of. So before we get started, a quick hypothetical question for you.
I don't like hypothetical questions. They always are something silly like, would you rather see your kids crushed by a car or eat Skyline chili?
No, you're going to love this one.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, option A is you have to have like a 5-way Skyline chili, which might sound a little off color, but it is one of their menu items. It just means it has a bunch of stuff. It's like a big gargantuan plate of meat with cheese and onions and all kinds of other crap on there.
Don't
Yeah,
forget the spaghetti.
spaghetti. Okay, so you either have to have that or you have to drive around a Cybertruck for an hour. Which one do you choose?
I don't.
You don't? Okay. What if it is either you drive around a Cybertruck while eating Skyline chili, the Cybertruck is on FSD, so it's driving itself, or death? Which one do you choose?
Ooh, another tough choice.
Okay. Let's get into it. But seriously,
am I going to be responsible for all the stuff I hit when I drive that big whale of a vehicle?
No, the Tesla, that thing can't currently drive itself, but soon it might be able to.
No. When I'm driving the big school bus Tesla truck, am I going to be responsible for all the stuff that I hit? Because I'm going to hit stuff with that truck.
Of course. Why wouldn't you if you cause an accident? Or
Oh, then I choose neither.
well, no, I'm not going to get you one. Christmas was coming soon, but no, I'm going to return it.
Shucks.
It was going to be great. It had your face on the side, a big wrap with your face like 3 feet high.
Oh.
It's going to be awesome. Your face on the wheels, like those spinner things, would have been great.
Okay, now that everybody has turned off the show, let's record. Let's get into it.
Okay, what is today's episode about?
FI is great, but it's not for everyone. The initial idea for this episode was to have a conversation about how to get someone on board with financial independence. But that's really too specific, and it's also not a really great place to start. Trust me, I have tried to get a lot of people on board just by bringing it up, and everybody looks at me like I'm crazy. So we decided to change the tune a little bit. It's kind of like trying to teach someone calculus when they may not even have had algebra yet. Let's just talk about how to have a money conversation.
And that's pretty uncomfortable as it is because if you're listening to this podcast, we're money nerds. You probably love to talk about money. You go to things like economy, which I would say there's probably hardly any money conversations actually at those things, but that's the whole backbone of it. That's what brought us there. This whole thing of money and this thing that we have in common, financial independence. But most people are not like this, and most people do not want to talk about money either because they're shy and we're not supposed to do it. Maybe they have money and they don't want to come across like they're bragging, and this is really what I want to talk about today, they're not good with money and they're embarrassed by it. Those are the people I really want to talk to because I think we've got some knowledge. We've done all right, and we can help some of these people. But how do you open that door to get in their ear? It's not easy, right? What do you think of this?
It isn't easy. because most people don't want to talk about it. They are, like you said, they're embarrassed about their financial situation, and they feel like because you are good with money, you're going to judge them or you're going to make them feel bad for the fact that they don't know anything about money. Which leads me to our first tip: be vulnerable and be genuine. Don't lecture somebody on the things that they've done wrong. Talk to them about things that you have done wrong. It's always easier to relate to somebody when they're not perfect. And if they see you as being good with money, in their mind, you're not the same. And they don't want to bring up their problems with you because, there's a lot of guilt involved with not being good with money. But when you're not taught something, like, I'm not good at calculus, throwback, Carl. I'm not good at calculus, and I don't feel bad about that at all. I was never taught calculus, probably because I failed a bunch of other math classes. Math isn't my jam. That doesn't make me a bad person. That makes me bad at math. If money isn't your jam, that doesn't make you a bad person. That just makes you uneducated about money. And if you are educated about money as the friend, it's really easy to help them see small changes that they can make that can have bigger, what is the word I'm looking for? Bigger
Impact.
impact. Yes, bigger impact down the road if they start making those small changes. And that starts with you being vulnerable and genuine. When was a time that you made a huge mistake with money? Bonus points if your huge mistake kind of lines up with their huge mistake. For example, when I was in my 20s, I lent my boyfriend at the time some money. I'm sure everybody listening now could be like, oh, did he ever pay you back? That's a big fat no. It was enough money at the time that it hurt
What did you lend him money for?
to pay his rent.
Ooh, and he never paid you back?
Never paid me back.
Did you break up shortly after that, or what happened?
We did.
Oof. Well,
It was
that
not
is too
Carl.
bad.
It was not Carl.
Wait, can I borrow some money?
I learned my lesson. Never lend money to friends or boyfriends.
So, money is one of those strange things that most of us don't really learn much about in school. We learn about, well, some of us learn about calculus. The derivative of 4x squared is 8x. I still remember some of my calculus. Not to brag.
Okay.
Anyway, but yeah, Mindy is not impressed. I'm thinking back,
I don't even know if you're right.
I am right. The derivative of 8x to the power 3 is 24x. You multiply the exponent by the thing in front of the x. Anyway, this isn't a calculus lesson, and that's about the extent of what I remember. Wow. Hopefully there's still people listening. Yeah, the thing about money, I think back to my financial education. I had one semester in high school, and they taught things like how to write a check. They taught us about going to the grocery store and you look at the price per ounce, and that's how you really want to compare prices. They taught us about not overdrawing your bank account, but very, very simple. Like in terms of math, you're learning like addition and subtraction. You're not learning anything like investment. You're not learning about compound interest. You're learning the very basics and things that will help you in the real world, but they're not going to take you that far. They're going to help you subsist as a basic human and go to the grocery store and maybe not bounce checks, but nothing beyond that. So where do we get our money education? It is from our parents and the examples they set. And I'm not saying my parents or your parents, lovely wife, but a lot of people's parents aren't that great with money. And that's where people are going to pick everything up if their parents have nice cars and overspend and maybe buy things they can't afford. You might not know all the facts of their finances, but you might try to repeat those things. What do you do when you tell kids, oh, you got to save your money, you can't buy this, you should pay cash for this? And then they go home and their parents have done the exact opposite for whatever reasons. Just because they didn't have the education either. So the cycle continues on and on and on. But one last point about this. Well, I'm curious, do you have any comments on that?
I was going to call you a nerd for knowing what the derivative of 8x and 3x.
Yes. We've made some big money mistakes. I'll be vulnerable right now. when the Great Recession happened, I kind of freaked out. I remember looking at our 401k and it kept on going down, down, down. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to stop contributing to this and not look at our finances for like the next 2 or 3 years. And that's what I did. So the best time in my entire life to invest, I was out of the market and not putting any money into it, which was painful to think about. We did all right, but we would have been doing even more all right now if I did not make that mistake.
Well, I was today years old when I learned that.
Wow. Can I borrow some money?
No, you're terrible with it, apparently.
Whoa, you're the one who lent your untrustworthy boyfriend money to pay the rent.
Wow.
Was he employed?
He was.
Okay.
He could have paid me back.
He didn't save up his money or what? He didn't save up for rent or?
No, he was terrible with money.
No. What was his job?
He was a cook.
Oh, what was your job?
I don't know, I was probably a waitress at the time.
Ooh, you met on the job.
We did.
Okay. Man, I'm learning all kinds of things about you tonight.
I'm learning all kinds of things about you.
What restaurant was it that you met in?
Baker Square.
Our marriage might not survive this. Did you like the same kind of pie? Or he probably couldn't afford pie because he had to borrow money from you. Did he have you steal
got it
pie?
for free. You got it for free at the end of the night if it was unsold.
It was all the crappy pies, though, right? It's like survivorship bias. The ones that are still there are the ones that no one wanted.
Yes. This is way derailed. Let's get back on topic.
You're just trying to change the conversation away from these uncomfortable conversations about your money mistakes, which is fine. Okay, why don't we go on to the next point, and then we'll probe Mindy's pre-Carl love life a little bit more later
No,
on.
we won't.
Inquiring minds want to know, meaning me, and the bull. The bull wants to know.
Okay, just do the next topic.
Okay, our next point is be willing to have a conversation with no expectation that the other person is going to reciprocate. One thing that might happen is they might not be ready to share at that moment, but when they are, you'll know that you're there for them. So let's say you see someone making a big mistake and you want to talk to them about it. They might not be ready, they might be embarrassed, but the fact that you brought it up, hopefully in a gentle, thoughtful way, they're going to remember that and they might come back to you at some future point. Like, how would you open a conversation like that, hypothetically speaking? Let's say you were working at Baker Square and your boyfriend is like, I ran into hard times knowing what you know now, and I want to borrow $200 to pay rent. What would you say to him now? You've seen him in a vulnerable situation, an opportunity for you to perhaps help. What would you do?
Well, I would ask him what happened to the money that he had originally set aside for the rent. Also, it wasn't $200, it was $500.
Whoa, imagine what that'd be worth today.
More than $500.
You'd be
I don't
rich.
want to imagine what it was be worth today. It was worth getting rid of his self.
Well, that's a signal. Maybe if you wouldn't have done that, you would have still been together. And
Ugh,
yeah.
that would have been a terrible life.
Who knows what
Anyway,
your life would have looked like? But yeah, what would you see? So you wouldn't give him the money, to be clear, but what would you say?
I think that's really a good point. I wouldn't give him the money. And the reason that I wouldn't give him the money is the number one rule of lending people money is never, ever, ever lend to friends or family. Isn't that the number one rule?
I think so.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
So that would have been a good rule for me to follow. I would be $500 richer at least right now. Come on, I was 20. I was probably blow it myself. But it was my money to blow. It wasn't his money to blow. I would ask him where his money was, what his plan to pay me back would be, and encourage him to work it out with his landlord or pick up extra shifts, work a waiting shift instead of a cook shift, and make instant cash so that you can pay your rent or pay your rent, as close to on time as possible. But I think that what happened is an open-ended conversation. Why don't you have any money is an accusatory way to start the conversation. And that leads me to the next point. Never be accusatory. If you want to have an open financial conversation with someone, telling them all the things that they did wrong, telling them what they should be doing or what they shouldn't be doing. Carl, you need to stop spending money. You waste your money on dumb stuff. This is why you're poor. This is why you're always going to be poor. Like, this is not a conversation I want to be part of as the recipient of somebody saying all these kind of negative things. Not kind of, very negative things. I'm going to clam up. I am never going to talk to you about money again. And probably I'm going to be like, maybe I'm going to reevaluate our friendship. Uh, but instead, be supportive. If they're bad with money, they know they're bad with money. If they're in debt, you telling them what a moron they are for being in debt isn't going to help them get out of debt. Be helpful, be supportive. Ask them if they have any questions about money or concerns about money, but don't be accusatory.
I think that's a great point. To build on that just a little bit, it's hard to know what someone's background is. Let's say they're 40 years old, their money beliefs are built on 40 years of experience, and a bunch of different things go into that. How you react with money depends on if you had it when you grew up, how much your job paid, if you ever struggled, how much you struggled. So I think you should always approach these conversations from a point of deep empathy, unless they ask you for $500. I'm thinking about that. That's a lot of money to me right now. I can't imagine what that was back then. It hurts me a little bit right now. I got to be honest.
Did you hear me say don't be accusatory? Did you hear me just say don't be accusatory, be supportive, be nice?
I'm empathizing with you. I'm
You're not.
saying I feel your pain. I'm trying to do my Bill Clinton
That's a
impersonation.
terrible Bill Clinton impression.
I feel your pain. I do feel your pain because I feel it a little bit right now. That $500 could have bought like how many of these bowls? Like 5 times. I'm going to exercise my math skills again. Probably about 15 because they were like $30, I think. So we could have had 15 more bowls.
We wouldn't have spent the money on 15 more bulls. 30 years ago, I wasn't thinking to myself, ooh, I better not lend my boyfriend $500 because in 30 years, I'm going to buy 30 bulls at the Wall Street kiosks when we go and get a picture at 6 o'clock in the morning.
You are in love. It's okay. I give you a break. And that leads to our next point, which we already covered a little bit, but look for an opening. Most of our family knows that we know what we're doing with money, so they might drop a hint if they want help. They might not come right out and say, I need help, but they might say something like, oh, I'm wondering how I should invest with my employer 401k, or I'm struggling to come up with a budget, stuff like that. And that's an opening for you to jump in there and offer some assistance possibly.
I can remember a time when your little sister said that exact same thing. I don't know what to invest in. I've got my retirement accounts at work and I'm not sure what I should choose. Oh, would you like to go over it? She said yes. And we looked at the options. And I said, I would like for you to look into if you have a 457 plan or not. And she looked into it and she did. And she has altered her investment strategy simply because we had a conversation.
Yeah, that's super cool. It always feels so good when you have a conversation like that because they asked for the help and you were able to help them with knowledge that they might have had to pay a lot for or might have never come across if you weren't there to help them out. I like this next one a lot. You came up with this one for the outline, but it is ask open-ended questions. And you mentioned that Ramit Sethi is really good at this. Didn't he study psychiatry or something like that?
Something like that. Social, I don't know. He studies something that makes him really empathetic and questioning.
And the value in these questions is they make the other person think. Instead of saying, well, how much did you spend last night? You could back up and make a broader question out of that, like, well, what do you think about your typical spending for a month or something like that? Give a question that makes the other person have to put a lot of thought into it and really gets their brain moving. I think that's when they're going to get a lot of value from something, right? Because they're going to really think about it. It's not an easy softball question. You're going to deeply probe them.
You say deeply probe them? I'm
I,
trying to type a question for later, and you're saying deeply probe?
I
Don't
did.
listen to Carl.
I did. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you should be sorry. Yeah, Ramit, when we were on the Ramit show, he would ask us a question that was deeply uncomfortable, open-ended, and he'd be like, "Do you think you're cheap?" I guess that's a yes or no question, but it requires another answer. It's not just, "Yeah, sure, I totally feel like I'm cheap." It requires more answer because you have to defend yourself. And questions like that are also good. They're similar to the open-ended questions. They're going to give you a lot more information about the person that you're talking to. So think about some questions that you might want to ask somebody, but we've also got some questions to suggest for you.
I want to back up a second. That one question that you just asked, I think, is really powerful because you didn't phrase it. You didn't say, "Are you cheap?" You said, "Do you think you are cheap?" So that adds a whole nother deeper layer of complexity because it's pretty easy to, oh, yeah, yes or no, I'm cheap. But do I think I'm cheap? Then you might say, oh, yes or no, but here's why I think that, or here's why I don't think that. So those are great questions. I love that.
Yeah, questions that make them want to explain themselves might work, might not work. This could go back to the non-confrontational part. Don't ask the kinds of questions that will make them feel uncomfortable. And that was a bit of a difference with Ramit. He wanted us to get open and honest and vulnerable, and he just comes right out of the gate with something you're like, oh, I'm already off balance now from this conversation that's been going on for 13 seconds.
Yes. Well, should we get into some of our questions that might be
Yes.
interesting to ask a potential friend or family member who perhaps is struggling or could use a little assistance?
Well, what's your first one, Carl?
Do you have an emergency fund? This is just a real basic question. Most people should have this, especially if you don't have a lot of money to begin with, and it's something that is pretty easy to explain why you should do it and the value of it. So, yeah, simple, basic question.
This one is a yes or no question, and depending on their answer, could lead to you probing a little bit more. Do you have an emergency fund? No. Okay. How would you pay for brand new tires on your car if you ran over a bunch of nails or bolts in the road? I said bolts because I just ran over a bolt with Carl's Tesla. It was like this big, too. It was huge.
It's our Tesla.
Okay. But asking them a question like that can get them to start thinking, oh man, tires are like, how much are tires, Carl? If we got all four tires, I don't even
Ooh,
know.
probably like $800, I'm guessing.
Okay, so if you ran over a bunch of nails in the road and you needed four new tires, how would you pay for that? Oh man, tires are like $800 and I don't have $800. I don't know how I'd pay for it. I guess I'd just throw it on my credit card. That's
I'll,
not a good answer, but that starts, I mean, it's their answer. I can't judge the quality of their answer. That's how they would do it. This leads to another conversation. You could say, well, if you had an emergency fund that had $1,000 in it or $2,000 in it, you'd be able to pay for those tires and then still not completely deplete your emergency fund. This is what I do, and I am able to breathe a lot easier because I know that I'm not one mistake, one accident away from financial ruin.
I'll bet that $500 that you lent
Oh
that
my God.
boyfriend of days past would have been worth at least $800 in today's money.
You owe me four new tires, ex-boyfriend. Okay,
Wow.
another question you can ask them is, do you have any investments? Do you have an investments through your 401k at work, or do you have a Roth IRA? Do you have any after-tax investments in the stock market or in small businesses? And see what they say. No is a great opener to how do you how have you planned for retirement?
Cool. And our next one, kind of along those same lines, is do you know what your work offers for retirement planning? You'd be surprised at the number of people who don't really understand their company's 401k
No,
or
you wouldn't. Nobody
IRA.
understands their company's 401k. It's purposely obtuse.
Really, I did. I would always read all that stuff. Super interesting. I'd be going through all the actively managed funds, looking for the one with the highest returns, which was pretty dumb. I was probably doing the opposite thing. I didn't know what an index fund was. But yeah, I wonder how many people know what their work offers. And this could be a great opening. They could be saying, like, no, I've never looked at it. And then, which might lead to, okay, do you know if you're putting anything into it? And then that might launch into a whole other conversation.
Really? You read through all of your company's retirement planning documents? Shocker, nerd.
Of course I did.
After the retirement planning question, another question you can ask is, do you know the difference between different types of accounts, like a 401k and a Roth IRA? If they haven't expressed any interest in investing or having an emergency fund or anything like that, the chances of them knowing what these are also going to be very low. And this is an opportunity for you to explain what a Roth account means, what an IRA is, what a 401k is, and even if they don't have a company sponsored account, they can still be saving for their retirement in different ways, like an after-tax brokerage. A Roth IRA does not have to have a company sponsoring it. A traditional IRA.
Cool. Our next one, do you know how much you are spending every month? Yeah, I wonder how many people could answer this and be within 10% of their actual spending. Like, what do you think the percentage of people is who know approximately how much they spend every month is?
Outside the FI community, 2%. Do you have an
Yeah.
answer or are you just
No,
making me look silly?
I'm just curious. Well, both actually, both. Yeah, at least $500 to pay for your boyfriend's rent,
He's not my
apparently.
boyfriend anymore.
Okay. Well, that's good. That would be super awkward then, as if this conversation isn't awkward enough.
Yeah, this is pretty awkward. I'm so glad I brought that up. Do you know how much you are spending every month? So a few years ago, Carl and I publicly tracked our spending, and you can see that at biggerpockets.com/Mindy's budget. And you can see just how wrong I was in the first few months when I was trying to create a budget. I was going from an idea of what I thought I spent, and I had no idea because I hadn't been tracking it for a long time. This is a great thing that you can share with other people. Look, this financial expert totally screwed up all the time on her budget. Look at all the red. And that's fine. I will totally take the hit. Use me, talk smack about me. I won't even know and I won't even care. You can show people from that budget how a budget could be created. The way that I did that was a Google form that leads into a Google spreadsheet so that I could keep it on my phone and track my spending in real time while I was out and about. But then I could have the spreadsheet to look at on the computer. That's a great way to track your spending. Another great way to track your spending is just to put a piece of paper on the counter right where you come in to the house every single day and write down your expenses, write down what you spent every time you walk in. That's how we first started tracking spending like 14 years ago.
Cool. Our next one, have you ever tracked your spending, which is kind of similar to the previous one. If people don't know how much they're spending every month, they probably have never tracked their spending. But this could turn into a good conversation about why it's important to track your spending, at least for a month or two, because I think most people really are out of touch with this and don't really have any clue how much they spend. I would guess that most people would drastically underestimate it, maybe by as much as 25%, but probably more for a lot of people, actually.
We totally underestimated our expenses when we were doing that. At least it was public, so that we could make mistakes for everybody to see. And I'm actually going to this site right now so that I can look up just how off we were. So the first month I projected that we would spend 4,100 and we spent 5,300. Not so bad. The next month, I projected 4,800 and we spent 5,900. Again, not so bad. The next month, I knew we were buying something expensive. What did we buy here? Was it travel? Why was it so expensive that month? I projected 8,900 and we spent 9,900. The next month in April, I finally went under.
Okay. That 89 to 99, we were 1,000 over. That wasn't two boyfriends' apartments, was it?
Wow. Wow. You want to sleep on the couch tonight, don't you?
Um,
Yeah, you do.
yeah, I had a joke in there, but yeah, it's not appropriate for
Good. Keep it to yourself.
this conversation. I thought I knew everything about you, and now I think everything I thought I knew was a lie.
Yeah. It was just all a big lie.
Wow.
And the last question is one that I added. How do you feel at the end of the month with regards to your money? At the end of the month, I am stressed because I have run out of money and I still have bills to pay, or I have run out of money and rent is due and I don't know how I'm going to pay my rent.
Well, actually, if you're Mindy's boyfriend, you just ask for the rent money, and then you're okay, apparently.
Wow.
Just saying.
Sleeping on the couch tonight.
I like the couch. Based on some of the revelations that have come across in this episode, I'm not sure how we're going to feel at the end of this month. TBD.
I don't know how I'm going to feel at the end of this conversation.
So we talked about the basics of money today, budgets, maybe simple investing, and how you're going to have these conversations. Next week, I think we should delve into the whole financial independence conversation. How do you have this with a person? And I think this one isn't going to apply as much to friends or family, but it might be a spouse. So we hear these kind of things all the time where one spouse finds Mr. Money Mustache or someone else and thinks it's the best idea in the world. And then they tell their partner about it, and their partner thinks that their partner has gone insane and financial independence is a horrible idea. So how do you have a conversation about financial independence, much less get someone on board? It is a tricky question, but that's what we're going to talk about next week.
Thank you so much for listening to the Mindy
And Carl.
on Money podcast. We appreciate you. If you'd like to join in the chats, we have a Facebook group, which you can find at facebook.com/groups/Mindy on Money.
Do you think Mr. 500 is financially independent like we are today?
No, Mr. 500 is a disaster.
I was going to say my blog is 1,500, so I'm at least triple that.
You are 3 times as good as he is.
Only 3 times? Wow.
You're the one who said it, not me. You're the one who pointed out 1,500 versus 500.
No, you should have said, no, actually, you're much better. You're like, your magnitude's better.
No, you're much better. Your magnitude's better.
So magnitude is kind of a mathy term. Do you know what that means?
Yes, I know what that means.
Okay. What does it mean?
It means you're going to get a lot of people emailing Carl at MindyOnMoney.com to tell him not to be condescending to his wife.
Wow, I'm not trying to be condescending. Oh, man. Okay. Yeah, there might not be another episode. This might be it, but
That's not true.
we appreciate you. It's
Thank you
been
for
fun.
listening.
Bye.
Bye.